So much of game development is getting the most out of the hardware that you're using. And maybe it's not quite as much of a thing now. We have much beefier systems. Now you've got games that don't even really need to utilize like every little bit that they can. Optimization is still obviously very important if you want your game to run well. But the whole idea of making the most out of your hardware was certainly much more of a thing in earlier generations when hardware was much more limited. And it's very funny to see the discrepancies between just the visual quality of games on a lot of different systems. You have games that really don't look that great at all, and then on the extreme opposite end, Nintendo especially, they've always been so good at wringing every last drop of power from their hardware. Obviously, they're very familiar with their hardware, so they produce games that look like they should be on more powerful consoles. And sometimes these games were already impressive, but it's really impressive in its own way, seeing people, even years after the fact, going back to old hardware and producing things that even Nintendo themselves probably couldn't have done at the time. Or, like, maybe they could have if they wanted to, but, like, you've never seen anything like this. All that to say, somebody, one Joshua Barreto, is remaking Super Mario 64 for the Game Boy Advance. And this is not a port, as many publications are incorrectly reporting. It's pretty much a ground-up remake, because it wasn't really possible to port over any of the actual code or anything like that. So he's remaking it, and a couple months ago, he released his first video on this, showing a very rudimentary build, mostly just a little red triangle running around the Peach's Castle Gardens. And even this was incredibly impressive. You know, the Game Boy Advance, just like with the Super NES, there were some games that utilized 3D graphics, and whenever it did, I remember just being completely floored. Just the idea that a handheld could be used to produce genuine 3D graphics, even if they were super rudimentary. I don't know, I thought it was the coolest thing. I remember playing like Tony Hawk, like the little, oh my gosh, the little 3D guy's 3D, or like whatever that space shooty game. I think, was it a launch title? And like the backgrounds are 3D. I just thought it was the most amazing thing ever. And so now seeing a fully rendered 3D environment, even if it's just a little triangle running around, like this is super duper impressive. Just an honest to goodness 3D platformer on the Game Boy Advance. And before you ask, yes, he has this running, at least it is capable of running on actual Game Boy Advance hardware. This is not just like a ROM hack or anything. This is all completely legit. And it's crazy. And the awesome thing, like this was already cool enough. Just seeing this 3D environment of the Castle Gardens on a Game Boy Advance, that's cool enough. But he has been consistently working on this project and releasing occasional updates ever since then. And I've been meaning to cover this story. Even just this initial video was already so impressive. And since then, he's produced so many more updates. He's improved the game so much, and now right here we have the latest update. You can see that there is now an actual model for Mario. He performs a bunch of moves that you would expect, a triple jump, a jump, and a dive, and all of that stuff. He's added in rudimentary scene transitions, so now you can see Mario going into the castle and actually like going through a door and running around Bob-omb Battlefield, and I just like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy seeing this little 3D Mario running around Bob-omb Battlefield, for real, on what is essentially Game Boy Advance hardware. And because this is an ongoing project, and you know, he's just one guy, he's doing it in his spare time, so like, it's still very basic, it's still very rudimentary, and I don't know if he plans on going all the way and actually remaking the entire game. It might not be possible. He might not maintain interest for that long. Really don't know at this point, but at least at the moment, he is slowly, over the weeks and months, kind of just building out this little Super Mario 64 GBA prototype. And like, sure, it's very, very low resolution, you know? Like, would a person really, even if this were possible back when the GBA was the new thing, would someone have wanted to play a 3D platformer quite at this level if it kind of had to look this this rough, you know? We've always made sacrifices for handheld games. You know, the Switch kind of like was the first system where you didn't have to make quite as many sacrifices, but we were used to making a lot of sacrifices. But, you know, game developers always kind of had to balance. When is it too much? When do you reach a point where you're sacrificing too much just for the novelty of making this happen? It has to be a good game on its own. It has to be worth it. Is this ultimately something that would be worth it for an entire game experience, or is it more of just a novelty? Is it more something that's just kind of fun to watch? I really don't know. But at the moment, I think I don't care. You know what I mean? At the moment, I don't think it matters at all. Right now, this is just somebody doing something really, really amazing with very, very old hardware. And I am just I'm fascinated by it. It interests the heck out of me. It's so cool. I can't get enough of these update videos. Every time there's a new one, I am all over it. And clearly, this Joshua is very, very talented. Just very, very good at what he does. Has a really deep understanding of how this stuff works. And so you have people in like the comments being like, why are you not a professional game developer? Why are you not into that? And he says he tried it and it just completely destroyed his passion for the process. He'd rather just do it as a hobby. And I can respect that completely. You know, there are many creative mediums. I mean, I personally know people, you know, someone who might be into music or something, and they tried to make a career out of it, and they just realized that that pursuit of like trying to make it into a job, it just made it not fun anymore. So they just don't want to do it. They'd rather just do it for fun. I can really respect that. I have a problem with that. Anything that I want to do, I'm like, how could I turn this into a job? Because I want to be able to do it more. You know, it's not about greed. It's like, if you can turn your hobby into a job, then, you know, get a job doing something you love and you never work another day in your life. That whole thing. You want to do something fun and be paid for it so you can keep doing it. But no, I can completely understand where Joshua Barreto is coming from here. It's more fun just to do this, you know? And everybody can just kind of enjoy it here on YouTube. Getting really good views on these videos. A lot of people are really incredibly interested in this, and so it's a lot of fun. He's really bringing a lot of fun, a lot of joy into our days, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, Joshua Barreto, if you're listening to this, you're doing an awesome thing, and it's incredibly, incredibly entertaining and fascinating. It's just like magic. Game development overall already is like the biggest magic trick possible. Like just seeing how video games are made and just how that translates into this thing on screen that you can play. Like that's already magic. Game developers are wizards. They are wizards. And to put this, seed Super Mario 64 on a Game Boy Advance. Boy, that's quite the spell you got here. Quite the enchantment you have cast, and I am very much looking forward to seeing more.